The money is structured, right? The economic signal, underpinning our entire economy is signaled to consume, right? This money will be worth less in the future, spend it. And Bitcoin gives them something totally different than that. It goes like, hold on a minute. Like if I just save this thing and I defer gratification, like the future will be better. And once you put that in front of somebody and someone starts gets that nugget in their head, they start to learn a lot about a lot of things and see things completely differently. They start to research, why money is the way it is. They start to look at our own history. They start to question the world around them and see things in a much more enlightened way. And that ripples out beyond just economics or making money. They start to, they start to get really interested in making a family often. And things like this, right? It really rewires their brain, and it's lovely.
I'm joined today by Alexander Leishman, founder of the Bitcoin-only brokerage River, which helps people and businesses buy and use Bitcoin. River serves more than 3,000 businesses, has $2.5 billion of Bitcoin under custody, and we'll talk more about specifically why you're Bitcoin only. But for now, welcome to the New Founding Podcast.
Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to finally be on.
Let's go. So I want to start with your background, actually. I found it very interesting. You studied aerospace engineering at the University of Maryland, and you jumped between a few different technical roles. And then on the back end of that, you did a year at Deloitte. How did that happen? And how did that go?
Yeah, so I did a few internships in college and in very technical things, kind of mechanic technician internships. And when I graduated with my aerospace degree, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Obviously, University of Maryland's near the DC area. So what I saw was a lot of aerospace jobs at that time were government jobs or government related jobs where, you spend 5 years designing some bolts for some plane that Congress cancels. Yeah. And I wasn't ready to devote my life to that. And so some guy from Deloitte came to my university and was like, at Deloitte and consulting, you can work at lots of different companies in 1 year and you get to fly every week. And I was like, hold on a minute, you can fly every week. That's like the craziest thing I've ever heard in my life. You can fly every week. And so I was kind of sold just from that, not really knowing what I wanted to do. And that's how I ended up working at Deloitte. And I did a year. I saw a lot of different companies. It was fun, but I didn't really feel like I was putting my engineering skills to work. And so decided to, move on after that.
Yeah, so you went to Stanford where you got a comp sci degree. On the back end, you joined Airbnb. And this is also Airbnb before its IPO, and it was still sort of in its most rapid growth phase. What was that like at Airbnb?
So at Airbnb, I was on the computer security team. Yeah. So I got to see what a quickly growing system at scale looked like. I also got to see what, how a real Silicon Valley company worked, both the good and the bad.
By the way, can I interrupt you and say we have the pink cans here? So Silicon Valley never really.
Yeah, I brought some of the Silicon Valley culture to River.
Raspberry seltzer water
and
here.
Grapefruit.
This is
but you could take it a level further. You could have the spiced cardamom custom Spindrift homemade by.
It's good. Continue
by children in the basement. So yeah, it was it was a really good experience to see what, a well-run sort of successful company looked like, how the engineering worked, how the computer systems worked, how just they crafted a corporate culture internally, which I thought was very powerful, was very well done, even though I didn't agree with all parts of it. Just seeing how that was constructed and operated was very interesting to see how an organization like that runs. And that actually inspired, taught me a lot about how to build my own company.
When did you get into Bitcoin? Was it in college? Was it at Stanford? Was it at Airbnb? At what point?
Yeah, so it was while I was working at Deloitte.
Okay.
So a year after I graduated college. But before that, I had gone down a rabbit hole of wanting to create my own currency that the government couldn't control. I kind of went down the economics, Friedrich Hayek rabbit hole in college.
Yeah.
And wanted to create my own commodity-backed money. Couldn't figure out how to do that because I did a lot of research. The guys who made something like the Liberty Dollar, which was a gold-backed digital currency, went to prison.
And what year was this?
I was working on that idea, just thinking through it in 2012.
Okay.
I didn't know about Bitcoin at the time. Bitcoin
Yeah.
was around.
Yeah, the white paper came out in what, 2009?
Yes.
2009? Yeah.
Yes. And then while I was at Deloitte, I did, in my free time, I was doing a web application programming class online on Coursera. And a guy named Balaji Srinivasan was teaching it, and we used the Coinbase API to build a project. And I was like, Bitcoin, that's interesting. Like, what is this thing? And so then I read the paper, and I was like, I put two and two together with what the kind of monetary rabbit hole I had gone down in this Bitcoin thing. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this fulfills the prophecy. And so then I left Deloitte at the end of 2013 to move to the Bay Area to work on Bitcoin. And that's what I did before grad school.
Great. So you're reading Hayek. You are thinking about problems of currency. What would you say is the number one problem that Bitcoin solves?
Yeah. So I came to the conclusion that money is one of the most important coordination mechanisms in society. So for our civilization, money is maybe one of, if not the most important coordination mechanism. Maybe morals, religion, you could argue, is a more important one.
Good save, by the way. Continue.
Well, yeah.
Your mom raised you well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I saw how it was corrupted over time and time again, right? In the story of human history, money gets corrupted once, sufficient forces are able to, take command of it. And I saw that happening in the United States, right? We had a free banking era where the U.S. did not have a central bank. We had then a gold standard with a central bank. We then went off the gold standard, and basically leading to the ability of the government to just infinitely print money. And I think that, and I came to the conclusion that the second and third order impact of that was way more harmful than was obvious to people. And that was the problem I wanted to fix.
When you think about the different eras of Bitcoin, so when I first got into Bitcoin, it was a little bit later. I am younger than you are, but it was that 2017, 2018 period. Bitcoin had previous run-ups, but that was the big one where it entered the mainstream consciousness. And I remember my statistics teacher in high school was completely fascinated with it. And he kept making up like fake stats problems for us to do that, like where Bitcoin was like a critical element in the problem that we were doing. So I sort of started to begin dabbling and experimenting with Bitcoin at that time, at that age. But of course, there were several phases before that, and then even since then. So can you sort of help map for us, like what are the different eras of Bitcoin, and where do we stand today?
Yeah, I think there's some very clear phases of Bitcoin's life. Yeah. The original phase was cypherpunk experiment, right? This thing was a project. I would say that's like 2019 to early 2013, 2009 to early 2013 was sort of cypherpunk experiment. This thing's interesting. Who knows what's going to happen to it? It's not a serious thing yet. It's a lot of quirky people from all over the world working on this thing. And let's see, right? 2013 is really when it started becoming this more speculative asset. The exchange infrastructure started to really begin to professionalize or mature to some degree, professionalized for at least relative to what it was. And you started seeing trading happening at real scales, Mt. Gox blowing up, Coinbase really taking off. And you had the speculative phase of Bitcoin's life, I would say up until about 2020, 2021, like the COVID era. And then the COVID era, late COVID, was like where Bitcoin is a store of value and a digital gold. Maybe about the same time, like Michael Saylor really sort of popularized it as a treasury asset for a company. And I think that's where we are now. Like Bitcoin was in this Bitcoin's here to stay. It's digital gold. And it is the uncorruptible, scarce asset for a world that's moving online.
I want to come to where Bitcoin is heading next. But first, I actually want to tell a quick story here. I actually went to a Bitcoin. I think it was just a Bitcoin meetup in Dallas. And I was mostly just curious about the Bitcoin scene, just going to an event where people are getting together and talking about Bitcoin. And, one of the first things that I noticed was just how these people were so excited. They were so happy to be there. They were so friendly. Like it reminded me of being at an evangelical Bible study or something like this. There was like this fervor there. Like everybody was so open. They all came and said hello to me.
Yeah.
Right. And these were young and old people, right? There was an old guy in a wheelchair. There was like a young girl who was like in college or whatever. Like everybody just wanted to talk, and they wanted to talk about Bitcoin. And the question that I actually have for you is, I think like some critics of Bitcoin, I think that they see it as potentially like a new form of materialism or greed, or even sort of this idolatry of money or something like this. Like there's some critique there that has been leveled, but I actually think that that's wrong. Like the way that I often read it is that like the Bitcoin and even maybe crypto more broadly is like an extremely religious phenomenon in certain ways, or at least I would assert that. I want you to react here, but let me add a few more layers to this. One is that I kept hearing people tell basically like these salvation stories, where I'd be like, I was out of my job. It was bad. Like I was cleaning pools in my 30s, and then Bitcoin entered my life, right? And it gave me hope. And you'll hear these stories, and it's like really interesting. So there's like a salvation story. There's a sanctification story as well, I would say, where these people who are very invested in sort of Bitcoin more broadly, will often like they'll tell you that Bitcoin like helped them help make me a better person. I sort of got cut out the extra the excess drinking or whatever else, and sort of focused on ordering my life. You can even go like the direction of eschatology, where it's like there's like a definite direction this is all going. There's a decentralized future. And the evangelical element we already mentioned, right? Where there's like, they're so eager to share. So I'm curious, like, do you see Bitcoin as a strictly like material phenomenon? Like, what do you think about all of those elements? Do you experience, like, do you see those around you when you're at Bitcoin conferences and whatever else I'm sure you're at all the time? Like, how do you react to all of that?
Absolutely. I see all of that. And I think that is actually the signal and the signs of what we're missing at a macro level when everyone's on a sound hard money standard, right? I think what you're seeing there is Bitcoin's role as almost it's all of those things. It's also a mirror, right? But really what it does is it puts in front of somebody something, one, that's interesting and new, right? And something where it goes like, hold on a minute. Like if I just save this thing and I defer gratification and I like the future will be better.
Yeah.
And they didn't like sort of society today is not structured in a world where that's the default.
Yeah.
Right. Now I think there's a lot of reasons for that, but one you could argue is the money is structured, right? The economic signal, underpinning our entire economy is signal to consume, right? This money will be worth less in the future. Spend it. And Bitcoin gives them something totally different than that.
Well, it's the reverse, right? People would talk about stacking sats or whatever, right? Which is the exact inversion.
Exactly. And so, it's throwing a really strong economic signal at somebody to reflect on their behavior. Look at what, say deferring gratification will make your life better. And once you put that in front of somebody and someone gets that nugget in their head, they start to learn a lot about a lot of things and see things completely differently. They start to research, why money is the way it is. They start to look at our own history. They start to question the world around them and see things in a much more enlightened way. And that changes, and then that ripples out beyond just economics or making money. They start to, they start to get really interested in making a family often, and things like this, right? It really rewires their brain, and it's lovely. It's fascinating.
I'm curious in your own experience, like you mentioned, I think what you described was fairly intellectual in terms of how you came to Bitcoin, right? You were thinking about the principles of Bitcoin before you even came across Bitcoin. Like, do you have any personal experiences even related to any of those elements where it's like where the way that you approach Bitcoin has sort of like transformed your maybe your way of life?
Well, yes, my entire life for the last 15 years, or sorry, well, 13 years has been devoted to Bitcoin. So I think I've gone even deeper than most, right? I didn't just self-reflect and go, well, how can I live better to earn more Bitcoin or think longer term? I was like, I kind of was in the earlier side of things. So I was like, this needs to happen. I just threw myself into it. Like, I need to help make this happen. I want to build, the bank of Bitcoin. I want to help bring this to the world. And so for me, it gave me something more than just, a mirror. It gave me like a mission in life, something that I can work on and work towards building. And I feel very grateful for that.
If Bitcoin succeeds, what existing institutions today are going to fail?
Well, there's different levels of success. I think Bitcoin has already made a tremendous amount of progress and succeeded more quickly than I maybe could have hoped, right? I always kind of had a sense what's happened would happen, but it's kind of like when you meme something, right? You don't really know, you think it's gonna, but you don't really. And then when it happens, you're like, wait, hold on a second.
Trump 2015, 2016.
Exactly. Wait, hold on a second. Like, all those memes worked. Wait, hold on. Like, I didn't really expect it that, I didn't expect it to work.
Yeah.
And so, but I do think that what we will see, I think what we're entering, I call it the dual money era. I think we're entering a world where people will continue to use dollars. The dollar isn't going away anytime soon. It will continue to be the transactional currency of the world for the foreseeable future. But people will increasingly save in Bitcoin. And so I think what we'll start to see is a real change in banking as that happens. And now the time frame on that is unclear. Will it be, 5 years, 15 years, 20 years? But I think banks will look fundamentally different in 20 years. And I think what's unclear is what impact is it going to have on the government? I think it's like too complex of a situation to try to predict. A lot of Bitcoin people like to say it'll take power away from the government. It reduces the government's ability to print money. Maybe that will happen. But I don't know over what time frame. And so that's where it's a little fuzzy.
Can we move outside of, let's say, financial institutions and government institutions? And I think there's a lot of interesting questions there. But what other institutions, like how do you see Bitcoin impacting things like family or the church or like the art scene, or people talk about Bitcoin monastery? There's a whole sort of range of things here. Obviously, there's a whole broader like biology network side of things we could go into as well.
Yeah.
But what else do you think? Like, I think it's right. Bitcoin has succeeded in many ways, but let's go 10, 20 years out. Like, how does this technology, if the trajectory keeps up, like how else does it transform us beyond like what a vice president at JP Morgan has to think about?
Mm-hmm. I think that what we're already seeing is sort of the concept of like the Bitcoin family emerge.
Okay, tell me more about that.
When a household figure is interested in Bitcoin, right? Often there's this concept of, this is the Bitcoin we have. This is our family's Bitcoin, right? I'm going to pass this to my children. It's almost like reigniting this maybe desire to like view the family as this, having economic continuity into the future, which I think we've lost in a way as a country, right? Sort of, I think the post World War II, like my kids are going to fend on their own. I'm not leaving anything to my kids because, I didn't have anything, that kind of thing, like is actually very weird, like an anomalous.
It's a historical anomaly.
It's a historical anomaly.
Yeah. And
I think in a way, like a Bitcoin family thinks about like passing the Bitcoin on.
Yeah. You can think about how somebody, maybe there was a homestead out in the Midwest or something like that. A frontiersman thought about passing that on to his kids and grandkids. And in many cases they did. And then, yes, coming out of these in the post-war era, or whatever else you have, basically you have taxes that go into effect on like if there's an estate or whatever else. And like in the end, there's a number of different ways that people's approach to these topics have also changed. But you're basically saying like, this is the like it's a Bitcoin ranch, basically, or a
Yes.
digital ranch.
It's a digital ranch
that you're passing along to the kids and grandkids. And it's not just about it being passed along, it impacts the way that the family is sort of thinks and is structured immediately. Yes. And how so?
Yes. And it's a digital ranch, and it can also be split up fairly. Yeah. Right. And it just hits different than
I'm a third son myself. So am I cooked? Like, what's the policy for like first as a primogeniture or whatever?
That's a good question. We'll have to ask Satoshi.
Yeah. Is there a paper on that?
Yeah. But it just, there's something like it hits different than the stock portfolio getting liquidated and this financial, in a way. Like, one of the things that I like about Bitcoin, my belief is I hope that what it brings about is a definancialization of things. I think financialization is useful for some things, but generally it takes the soul away from a lot, right? It's this abstract, securitized layer for something. It's there's no soul to it. And Bitcoin is this weird thing where it's like this new novel financial asset, but it feels like there's virtue. Like I like put work into collecting these Bitcoin, and this is for my scion. And it's just different than my Robinhood account or my Fidelity portfolio.
You said something really interesting just a few minutes back where you said Bitcoin is a mirror, and I want you to expand on that a little bit. Tell me more about what you meant there. But I mean, the first thing that comes to mind to me is that humans are totally depraved, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, humans are deeply sinful. And so, to whatever extent Bitcoin is a mirror, like, should we not be a little bit concerned about that?
Well, I think that Bitcoin is a mirror because people see the values it represents, right? As it's an asset. There's like some inherent virtue in it. It takes a lot of work to get yourself. And the question people always ask is, well, the desire people have is wanting more of it, right? And so then I think the mirror, the question it forces you to ask is, why don't I have more? Why don't I have more of this really hard to get thing that I wish I had more of? And it's often not more for some, more just for my family, more for the future. And well, often the reason you don't have more is because you made bad decisions, you didn't work hard enough. It forces you to question your shortcomings and like, what can I fix in my life to change this? So,
certain, let's say, theological type people, or let's just say boomers in general, there's probably two different frames you could take on this. If you like, one, what you're describing, that sort of accumulation, stacking, sats is basically a form of greed, right? But then there's a reverse side of this. Another way you could look at it is that it's a form of stewardship, right? Mm-hmm. So can you talk me through how you think about the tension between those, and maybe even where you can go, where it goes wrong and where it goes right?
Yeah. Now I'm going to say something that's a little bit controversial.
Yeah.
In that I think that, anyone can be greedy with any asset, right? There are certainly greedy people in Bitcoin, right? But I think directionally, this is a true statement. Bitcoin fosters stewardship, crypto fosters greed.
All right, explain that. Yeah.
Bitcoin is a first of its kind, one of a kind, decentralized, scarce digital asset that to get more of, you have to work, or you have to mine, or you have to buy it. It's like very hard, right? There's no easy way to get this thing. Crypto, on the other hand, is an ecosystem of people who've created their own new money out of thin air. And the whole game is to meme it to convince somebody else to buy it from you. And also, it also has a culture of hyper financialization. Put everything on the blockchain, borrow against this asset, and then do a flash loan over here and do all these other things, right?
This is the Sam Bankman-Fried.
This is this is the Silicon Valley thing, right? Yeah. Silicon Valley was actually never really big on Bitcoin. Silicon Valley missed Bitcoin. Silicon Valley missed Bitcoin. Then they realized, hold on a second, I can create my own coins and invest in this company Coinbase, list these coins on Coinbase and sell them to Uber drivers, and they get the fastest liquidity I could have ever gotten, much faster than investing in a venture investment.
Yeah.
And so there is actually, I think this whole Yeah, Bitcoin is like this pure thing, but it spawned a lot of very
It spawned like the broader crypto casino,
yes.
which has its own set of, right. It's just like there's addictive qualities to it, right? There's like it's actually, there's these famous lines from whatever, probably like 2019, 2020 from Charlie Munger, and others echoed them, where he basically said like cryptocurrency is stupid, immoral, and disgusting. And there, I think he was mostly talking about piracy, scams. And then there's the whole sort of broader set of like this sort of venture backed, like, people call them coins or whatever else like that. I think there is something to some of that critique there. So can you explain maybe in a little bit more detail, like how is Bitcoin different from that? And even more recently, still, JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon has still sort of voiced like various forms of hesitation and sort of criticism about the asset class. And so, what really separates Bitcoin besides the fact that it was first?
Well, there's a few things. But the fact that it was first, by the way, is really, really important, right? It was the only cryptocurrency to ever exist and have this early group of adopters and followers that cared for its own sake, right? It was the only really pure original movement around in the cryptocurrency space. And that's like really important. It also has no known there's no founder, there's no key figure, right? Every other cryptocurrency, major cryptocurrency today, has a key creator. And the creator of Bitcoin provably started it in a way such that you could prove that he didn't get any of it himself before it was launched.
Yeah.
Every major cryptocurrency today that isn't Bitcoin has a launch that enriched an early set of people right away, right? So they have key man risks. They have what we call pre-mines back in the day, early allocations to people who never had to earn it themselves. They just created this money out of thin air. So they have, in a way, these like original sins, right? That like Coinbase was pure, Bitcoin was pure. It didn't have these flaws, these things that you just can never undo. And that's really important. And then on top of that, the way that Bitcoin is secured relies on this thing called proof of work. You have to actually put energy in this. You have to take something external that requires real resources from the outside world to earn more Bitcoin, right? With something like Ethereum, people who own Ethereum get more Ethereum because it's what's called proof of stake. It's just like banking, right? People with money earn more money. They don't have to actually put in any real work to get more of it. The system is designed to enrich people who already have it. Bitcoin, having a lot of Bitcoin doesn't get you more Bitcoin. You have to actually put in real work. You have to maintain a physical mining operation with megawatts of electricity, real problems that can happen, fans breaking, supply chain issues to get more. And that's also very important.
I know there are people who are listening to the New Founding podcast. Maybe they've never purchased any cryptocurrency, including Bitcoin, right? And I think for maybe one question that they would be thinking is like, you constantly get actually, like, whether it's advertisements or just like a friend who's I'll say they're shilling some coin or another at various different points. Again, the venture capital has gotten behind several of these non-Bitcoin cryptocurrencies over the past few years as well. Like, do you think there will ever be, are there any potential alternatives to Bitcoin that interest you at all? And do you leave that door open at all? Or are you like,
no,
yeah, Sola, Bitcoin, it's the Edonic coin. It's
everyone shilling you other coins is doing it to get more Bitcoin for themselves.
Interesting.
Altcoins or coins are just a way to for other people to steal your Bitcoin. That's the truth.
What are some specific examples of that? I'm actually curious. Like,
I have lots of friends in this industry.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you that almost all of them view the Bitcoin as the real savings and everything else is a bit,
so there there are people, and we won't name any names, of course, but like there are people in this ecosystem of like the crypto startups and venture capital who are sort of publicly pumping this or that cryptocurrency, but they're primarily stacking against sort of Bitcoin in this case.
Yes, and it's also how inside internally they're benchmarking their performance.
Interesting.
If you can't, Bitcoin is the benchmark, right?
So I mean, what you're really hitting on here is that there's this rift within the like there's the crypto people and then the Bitcoin people.
Yes.
And I think that's sort of this one of the most fundamental, like if any of our listeners like step into this space, like that's an obvious rift that becomes immediately obvious that the second you step into like any online or in-person space in here. I'm curious, like what are the other fault lines?
Yeah.
And maybe like zoom into just the Bitcoin side of things.
Sure.
Like what are there like 3 or 4 different schools of thought that are fighting each other in some way, or like the future of Bitcoin? Like talk me through that.
Yeah. There's just one other thing I wanted to add to the last question, which is some of the biggest Bitcoin holders are altcoin founders.
Interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's something
I wouldn't have guessed that myself. That's good. Yeah. It's
and
interesting.
then EOS, for example, right? There was that foundation is one of the biggest Bitcoin holders.
Yeah. Because it looks like the
Tezos Foundation holds a lot of Bitcoin.
My instinct would have been that, as you said, that Silicon Valley missed out on Bitcoin initially, and this would have been they would have missed it, and they would have basically tried to go all in on this alternative, basically. But what you're saying is they actually
did, but then they sold it to Uber drivers and then bought Bitcoin.
Yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, let's talk about some of the other rifts. Like rifts, it doesn't have to be a conflict, but what are the different schools of thought? Like how would you segment like the different? You think about even like the political right. Like we talk a lot about the populist right, and then it's like the Bannonites, and then there's like the tech right people, and then you also have the Christian right, and within the Christian right, there's the trad cats, and then you have like the Christian nationalists, and you have all the different groups. Like like map that out in Bitcoin world for me.
Yeah. So one of the amazing things about Bitcoin is everyone's always fighting. It's just like, right-wing Twitter where there's all these factions. Bitcoin, it's the same thing. A recent battle has been, I'm not even getting into that. It's too there's too much nuance. So the high level groups, I would say, are, you have the maxis, like the purists, right? And even among men, you probably have some subgroups. So you people who say, Bitcoin only, everything else is like a scam or offensive.
When you say everything else, is that all other forms of money, or is that like is that like stocks?
Well, that's where you can get varying levels of
like owning a home
of extreme, right?
Yeah.
You can. There are people who are like, we have a product at River where if you deposit cash, you can earn interest in Bitcoin on your cash. And when we launched that product, it's very popular. But when we launched that product, there were people who were upset that we were incentivizing you to hold dollars. They were pissed. Like you're incentivizing people to hold trash fiat currency. You shouldn't do that. So there's people who are real pure. Like I never want to touch a dollar if I can help it. Right. Or if I do, I'm immediately converting my Bitcoin to dollars and converting it back to Bitcoin. So you have that kind of type. You have people who are like, Bitcoin's the only thing in the cryptocurrency world that matters. Also in real estate and stocks and things like that. But then you also have, I would say, kind of like sort of transposed on top of that, like a different layer. Like you have like very religious Bitcoiners. Like there's a whole, like lots of Bitcoiners are very Christian. We serve a lot of churches actually at River. A lot of our clients are Christian. A lot of our business clients or institutional clients are churches buying Bitcoin. You have Bitcoin, interestingly, you can break this down a little. Bitcoin has also been classified as halal. So you have Muslim Bitcoiners, and which in the Middle East there's a big Bitcoin presence in the Middle East. You have the Chinese Bitcoiners, they used to be the biggest miners in the world. Some of them are so rich they, one guy, really nice guy, is so rich from being an early miner. He bought a SpaceX flight to orbit a few months ago. Okay. So you have actually a geopolitical thing. You have like the Chinese who think about it very differently than the Americans who view it more as like philosophical freedom thing. The Chinese viewed it as a way to like earn money and like move money internationally. You have the Middle East guys who are like, they have cheap energy. So they love the mining thing. So there's lots of different layers. I don't have like a clear taxonomy in my head of all the different groups, but hopefully that's a little flavor of the different.
That's good. I'm sure it's really difficult to know for certain, but if you had to take a guess at sort of the distribution of Bitcoin demographically and geographically, like what are the profiles of people that you see are owners, and like where are they based?
Yeah. So the majority of Bitcoin is owned by Americans and American businesses. We actually have a report on that where I forget all the detailed numbers, but if you Google Bitcoin in America River, we have a breakdown there.
Cool.
And the individual profile of somebody with Bitcoin is they skew male, but there are, I would say, like 20 to 30% female. And they're people who have agency over their lives, right? Like people who have got like, sort of crossed the mental barrier to go, I'm going to buy some Bitcoin, or people who have questioned something, right? They've questioned central banking. They have questioned, like something in their life that gives them that agency to go, I'm gonna start saving this thing. They typically, so because of that, right, they typically have like a pretty good job, or they have some ambition in their life, right? They're family oriented. They have a career, and they range anywhere from, young people just starting out in their careers to very wealthy people, who have very large Bitcoin allocations.
What about the Bitcoin nomad type of person? There's definitely a certain type that will sort of, they're in their early 30s. They sort of travel around various parts of Europe and Central and South America. It's like a sort of quintessential surfer bro. I don't think they surf that much, but there's like a little bit of that energy about them. Like, how did they fit into that? Like, what do you think of that demographic? Like, how do you think about that?
I mean, that's certainly a subset. Yeah, but it's not big. There aren't that many people like that, I would say. But there definitely is the, like, I would call them like the Costa Rican Bitcoiner.
Yes, exactly.
Like they love being in the jungle or being on this beach and surfing. And there is actually an interesting Bitcoin archetype, which is like the exit Bitcoiner, the opt-out Bitcoiner.
Yeah, like, if they followed the financial independence, retire early, it's like fire through. That's like through Bitcoin was like how they got there, or how is it different? No,
I would say it's a little different actually. Okay. It's like how they got their money is maybe more diversified. It's more like there's an archetype of Bitcoin that leans in. Like for example, you grow up in America, you're like, I want to fix my country, right? I want to fix America. Like Bitcoin is a way to fix America. I'm more like that, right? There's the Bitcoiner that's like exiting, right? I have my independence now. I am self-sovereign. I'm going to go live somewhere tropical or something, right? And build a family in the jungle or something like that. I'm opting out. So that is actually an interesting like dichotomy. You have like the nationalist Bitcoiners, and you have the sort of opt out, I'm a sovereign individual kind of Bitcoiner.
Which one are you?
I'm more of the nationalist type, because I just don't think the game theory of sovereign individuality actually works. I'd be happy to go into that, but like basically,
I am actually curious about that. Yeah, can you go into that in a little bit more detail?
I think that basically like the sovereign individual thing, where like you're opting out to Central America or something, only works because the U.S. is still functional and maintaining sort of like this veil of protection and stability on the rest of the hemisphere. So you're not really opting out of the U.S. You're just like you're still living within like the thing the place you're living is still only like, the stable thing because the U.S. is still functioning. If the U.S. fails, right? If you let this thing collapse and exit and just let it rot, like there's no saying your life is not going to be better no matter where you go.
Yeah.
Maybe you get rich enough to pay off some like dictator somewhere enough to leave you alone until you die. But what's the point?
Agreed. Yeah. One of the things that guides our investing here at New Founding is we like to say that we invest in solving critical civilizational problems. And thinking across our portfolio companies to date, we have never actually invested in a Bitcoin related company. So I guess my question to you is Bitcoin related companies solving civilizational problems, and if so, how?
I think it's an easier yes is Bitcoin solving a civilizational problem, and I would say absolutely, right? Bitcoin is the only incorruptible digital money. It's the only asset in the history of the world that you can trustlessly send anywhere. And so Bitcoin for sure is solving a civilizational issue. It's solving it's solving the problem of the economic coordination signal in our economy, money being corrupted by central forces.
Let's say we have this transition to, and maybe we end up in a future where the vast majority of people are using Bitcoin for transactions. They're using it as a store of value, et cetera, et cetera. Is that a stronger America? And do you worry about the period in the middle, in that transition? Like, how specifically does that, let's say you see like a nationalist Bitcoiner, which I love. Like, how does that strengthen America?
Yeah. So the way I view Bitcoin isn't like Bitcoin's taking the dollar down, right? And we're like attacking this thing that keeps America strong. The sort of like evil forces at play in our own government are taking that down. Bitcoin is the lifeboat, right? Bitcoin is the thing that's saving the Americans and giving us, it's the thing that will prevent that decline from being economically disastrous for Americans, right? If we get Bitcoin in the hands of every American and the US dollar collapses, they're going to be way better off than a world where it collapses without them having Bitcoin. And so I think it's going to save us.
Let's talk about your company as it stands today. So River, what do you do for your clients today?
So we make it easy to buy Bitcoin, keep it safe, and we have a lot of cool features and products that our clients love. We're known for our really good service. We're known for being super secure. And our mission is to build the world's most trusted financial institution. And some things that Bitcoin allows us to do that is really hard to do with other types of assets is we have something called proof of reserves. So every month we prove that we have every single Bitcoin in the vault that we say we have. We do a proof of assets and a proof of liabilities. So you can check that all the Bitcoin we say in your account are actually there in our vault.
Yeah.
We then also are basically building towards this world where we want to be your bank, right? We're not a bank, a chartered bank ourselves. We partner with a bank, but we want to be this world where we can be your banking app, and you can keep your cash with us and your Bitcoin with us. We pay a high yield interest rate on cash. It's FDIC insured, and we pay that interest in Bitcoin. So you can keep your dollar savings with us, and those dollar savings just earn Bitcoin every day. And so we have these cool things that make it really easy for you to just accumulate more Bitcoin. We also have 0 fee recurring orders. So if you set up an order that buys Bitcoin every hour, every day, every week, whatever, it's no fees after the first week. So we try and provide as much value as we can to our clients and make it really easy for them to start accumulating Bitcoin.
You mentioned some of your clients are churches.
Yes.
Who are, like, what is the span of sort of typical customer types? Is there certain I assume primarily businesses? Talk me through the rest.
Yeah. So our clients range from young people just starting out in their career, people similar to yourself, right, who open an account, get started. And then our older clients, and maybe into their 30s or 40s, they're often somebody with a good career, or they're entrepreneurs, or they're involved in some organization. So maybe they have a River account already for themselves, and they go, well, I run a farm or some accounting firm or something. I want Bitcoin for my company too, so I'll also open an account for my company. Or they're at a church. Maybe they're a deacon at a church, or they're heavily involved in their church, and they go, I want to donate Bitcoin to my church. I want my church to start saving in Bitcoin. And so they'll come to us and we'll open an account for them. So that's sort of how it is. It's like the institutional client is also a person.
Yeah. I want to ask about maybe political and religious institutions. And are there institutions, you could think about, like, obviously churches, but then there's like classical Christian schools, homeschool co-ops, there's that whole sort of suite of Christian colleges, right? Things like, there's a whole suite of things there. And then also on the political side, right, you have PACs, you have like the parties themselves, the GOP, and more. Like, where are those sorts of potential clients? Like where are they at in terms of adoption of Bitcoin? And like, where do you see opportunities? Like, where do you think some of them could benefit from something like River?
Yeah. So the first wave of clients of this ilk that got into Bitcoin were the ones that were at the most risk of getting debanked, right? And the cool thing about Bitcoin is even if you buy it through River and we're the custodian, you can take it out. So we have a lot of early clients that knew that this risk was something that they faced. And that woke them up to the value of this asset that you can take full custody of that the government can't take from you. So, sort of like maybe the edgier types were like kind of the first to realize the value of this. And over time, it's become more and more normalized. In fact, we even have senators who are clients, and that's publicly disclosed. I won't say the names, but you can Google it. And so I think the next opportunity is for nonprofits, political organizations, and just businesses to realize that keeping a chunk of your assets in Bitcoin will also give you more resources down the road to further your mission, right? And that's what a lot of our clients have seen.
Yeah, the point on risk of debanking, that was really alleviated with the Trump victory. But, I was talking earlier this week, I recorded a podcast episode with Curtis Yarvin, and it'll be going out just before this one goes out. So people can go back and listen to it. One of the things that he mentioned is that he basically said, you think that the oppression from 2016 to 2020 was bad. Like if the left gets back in power, right? They threw 40 Trump admin people in jail. It's going to be 4,000 this time. Mm-hmm. They debanked 400 people. It's going to be 40,000 people this time.
Yes.
And the rest. And so, you start to think about, there are people in the Trump administration now, maybe, sort of our age or whatever. Mm-hmm. And, if things don't go our way, which I try to remain optimistic and support the Patriots and whatever else, but things don't go our way, it's naive to think that the Bank of America isn't just going to snap right back against all of these guys.
Yeah. The one thing the left does is they project power. And one of the best things about Bitcoin is that Bitcoin is pretty immune to power being projected. And so if you have an asset, you ask yourself, you need to own an asset that nobody can take from you, that you can move anywhere without anyone knowing you're doing it. There aren't many things that fit that bill. You can't hide your real estate. You can't move somewhere with your stock. Let's say you actually did become a persecuted person. You can't really exit with your stock portfolio. You can't withdraw a bunch of cash from the bank easily. Bitcoin's really your only option, and it's like the go bag asset.
So for somebody who, let's say they're not using Bitcoin right now, and maybe they are exposed in some ways, if they wanted to use River, like what would they need to actually do practically? So they just go to the River website, they can just make an account, they can transfer.
Minutes.
Yeah.
You sign up in 2 minutes, connect your bank account, buy Bitcoin. And then I'd recommend, if you're worried about being oppressed politically in anywhere in the world, you should learn how to self-custody that Bitcoin, right? You should learn how to take complete access yourself, set up a hardware wallet of some sort. And in River, you can withdraw that Bitcoin to your hardware wallet. You can set up auto withdrawals. If you automatically buy, if it hits a certain threshold, it'll auto sweep. And so getting smart about that can make sense, but I just don't overwhelm yourself. Just sign up and buy $5 of Bitcoin, right? Buy $10 of Bitcoin, play around with it, get your hands dirty. Think of it almost as, if you're skeptical, think of it as an educational expense, right?
Yeah.
Like it's a lot easier to learn about something when you're using it than just theorizing. Buy $10 of Bitcoin and get smart about it. Make mistakes, play around with it. That's the best way to get started.
When it comes to self-custody and things like that as well, which leads to a point that I was sort of making at the beginning, is that people who are into Bitcoin are so excited that there's somebody who wants to talk about it. This has been my experience, because I think if you're a Bitcoiner, you sort of go around, it's again, I'll use the Christian analogy again, right? It's like you just became a believer. You have that fervor and you're going around and you're like trying to tell people about Christ on the subway, like nobody wants to hear it, right? And that's like, I think that's like the early Bitcoiner experience. It's like you want to like tell people about it, and everybody's like, I'm just going on to the next thing. And so I think if you can even just like, I'm sure there are people where you work or wherever else who are into this, they will go out of their way just to help you get a setup that actually works quite well. This has been my experience, and I think that's sort of broadly the case.
Absolutely. Yeah. And at the end of the day, you can't convince, you can badger people, but like people have to find it themselves, right? You can give people the tools, you can give people open the door, right? Plant the seed in their brain, but people have to come to it themselves. And so I don't say, oh, like you got to buy Bitcoin, like sign up for River right now. You got to do this. So like, it's going to be there when you're ready.
Can I ask a question? This is I imagine, so how many employees do you have right now? It's 70
About
something.
70. Yeah.
So when you're hiring somebody at a company that's focused on, a Bitcoin company, like what do you ask them in the hiring process? I've never interviewed for a company like this. Like, how do you tell who are the like Reddit meme coin type people? How do you like filter them out from like people who are like serious developers who can actually get things done? Like, what do you even ask these people in interviews for River?
Well, it's going to maybe be a little bit of a boring answer, but what I found when building an institution like River is you just focus on finding the smartest people you can and make sure they're a culture fit. And a culture fit doesn't mean they have to be like super in love with Bitcoin, right? They usually inevitably just end up that way working at River, right? Yeah. I would say it's a lot easier to take a smart person and make them passionate about what you're working on than it is to take somebody passionate about your work on but doesn't have the skills and like build the skills. So we're naturally self-selecting. Like if you're not interested in working in Bitcoin, you're not going to apply to River, right? So we don't have some test there, but we do heavily filter on competence and culture. And on the culture side, it's making sure are they okay working in a mission-focused company, right? Our goal is to build a business. Our mission is to build the world's most trusted financial institution. We're not some like Silicon Valley activist, we're not Google going to fly Hillary Clinton around in the private jet kind of company, right? Mm-hmm. Where our goal is to do this and do this only. We don't have affinity groups, right? We don't have, X type of people at River. It's like those are banned. We don't even allow a channel called parents. It has to be called kids, and anyone can be in the channel, right? There's no like parents group. We're all River. Everyone here is part of River. There's no like sub, groups or anything like that. And so we make sure people are okay with that culture. If they don't want that, then that's fine. They don't have to work at River. And we make sure they're smart, low ego, and that's worked out pretty well.
Fantastic. Where can people find you?
River.com. And I'm on Twitter at Leishman, my last name, Leishman.
Fantastic. Alexander, thank you. Thank you for joining.
It was a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the New Founding Podcast. New Founding has become a rallying point for founders and investors who are taking serious bets in the face of a stagnant business culture. Our venture fund backs early-stage startups focused on critical civilizational problems. If you're interested in pitching your company or investing in our fund, check out newfounding.com/venture and follow the link to apply. You can also follow us on X at New Founding and at NAT, Halberstadt, HALBERSTADT.